When Shamira ran away from her boss's house, she immediately tried to call Adam, the Ugandan man who had sweet-talked her into believing that escaping was the right choice. For 4 agonizing hours, she waited, but Adam didn't pick up. Panic and regret crept in as she roamed the streets of Dubai, clutching her few belongings and hoping for a miracle. Finally, Adam called her back. "Sorry, I was at work," he said casually. Shamira, her voice trembling, explained, "I've run away from my boss's house. Please help me, I don't know where to go." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Adam replied, "Why didn't you tell me before running? We could have arranged something. But right now, I can't help. I live in company accommodation, and the security is tight. They don't allow outsiders, especially girls living alone. I'm really sorry, Shamira." Shamira felt the world crumble around her. "I don't have a penny on me. All my hopes were with you. I don't know anyone here," she cried out desperately. But Adam simply said, "I have to go. I'm really sorry," and hung up. It was already midnight. Shamira had nowhere to go, and as she wandered the unfamiliar streets of Dubai, fear set in. Suddenly, the police patrol car stopped beside her. The officers stepped out, asking her questions in Arabic that she couldn't understand. "Where are you going? Where are you coming from?" one of them asked in a stern tone. Shamira stood speechless, unable to respond. They asked for her Emirates ID, but she didn't have it, or her passport. Her employers had kept all her identification documents. Without another word, the officer ordered her into the police car. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with God, "I've never been arrested in my life, oh God, please forgive me. It's all my fault." When they arrived at the police station, Shamira was fingerprinted. All her details flashed on the screen: the date she entered Dubai, her visa status, and her sponsors. The police placed her in custody since it was the middle of the night. But the cell was a nightmare, cold, filthy, and suffocating. The air conditioning was blasting at full force, making the already unbearable situation even worse. Shamira cried through the night, shivering both from the cold and from fear. Early the next morning, the police contacted her employers. "We have your maid in custody. She was found wandering near Ras Al Khaimah," they informed them. Shamira's employers, still on vacation, were shocked. "We'll send my sister to pick her up," they said. The entire day passed with no word from anyone. Shamira sat alone in the holding cell, feeling abandoned and filled with regret. It wasn't until the evening that her employer's sister finally arrived to collect her. As they drove away from the police station, the woman looked at Shamira with disappointment. "Why did you run away, Shamira?" she asked. But Shamira could only cry, too ashamed and overwhelmed to answer. When they arrived at the sister's house, she said sternly, "You'll stay here until your employers return from their vacation." For the remaining days, Shamira lived in silence, feeling completely out of place. She couldn't stop asking herself, "What will I tell my bosses? They had always treated her well, and yet she had betrayed their trust." Guilt weighed heavily on her heart as she waited for their return, dreading the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. 2 weeks passed, and Shamira's bosses returned from their vacation. The lady of the house wasted no time. She went directly to Shamira's room, only to find that Shamira wasn't there at the moment. As she looked through Shamira's belongings, she discovered something that made her even angrier: a hidden abaya that belonged to her. Furious, the lady thought, "What an ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for her, this is how she repays us." She and her husband decided they needed to deal with this situation. 3 days later, Shamira's bosses came to their sister's house where Shamira had been staying. They called her into the room and asked her to sit down. The lady looked at Shamira, who was already tearful and trembling. Did you lack anything? She asked calmly. Shamira, unable to hold back her tears, cried out, No, madam. Did we mistreat you at any time? The lady continued. Shamira was speechless, sobbing uncontrollably. All she could manage to say again and again was, Please forgive me. It's all my fault. Please don't send me away. I need this job, please forgive me. But her employers had already made up their minds. The lady then asked, Why was my abaya hidden among your things, Shamira? Shamira's face burned with shame, and she couldn't find the words to explain. Just before she could muster a response, the man interrupted, Stop. That's enough. We can't trust you anymore, not with our children, not with our house. Go pack your remaining things. We are taking you back to the office. Shamira felt numb, her heart heavy with sorrow. She couldn't stop crying that night as she packed up her belongings. The lady entered the room one last time, holding a new prayer mat and a Quran. She handed them to Shamira and said softly, Never stop praying. You are just not meant to live with us. Goodbye, Shamira. Though filled with sadness, Shamira felt a small spark of gratitude. She clutched the Quran tightly, whispering, Thank you. Early the next morning, the family driver took Shamira back to the office. When they arrived at Salama, the woman in charge looked surprised. Why are you back here? Your contract isn't done, she remarked, eyeing Shamira with concern. But Shamira was too ashamed to tell her everything that had happened. She simply lowered her gaze, unable to speak. Salama noticed her discomfort and gently said, Don't worry, Shamira. You'll get another house to work in. Shamira, now used to the routine at the office, tried to push aside her feelings of shame. Despite everything, she remained active and social, bringing positive energy to the office. Her warm smile and friendly demeanor lifted the spirits of the other maids. Whenever a local Emirati came to the office looking for a maid, all the present maids would line up in front of the customer. One day, a local lady came in, searching for a housemaid. The maid stood in a line, and as soon as she saw Shamira's warm, welcoming smile, she chose her. But before Shamira could leave, Salama took her aside. Go try to work for this lady for 1 week, Salama said with a reassuring smile. Then let me know how it goes. Shamira nodded, grateful for another chance, and hoped that this time, things would be different. Shamira left with Madam Amina, praying quietly, God, please make this place good for me. The drive to Diba felt long and unfamiliar, but she held on to hope. When they arrived, Madam Amina welcomed her into the house. Call me Madam Amina, she said. I lost my husband a few years back, so I live alone here. I have 2 sons, one is married and the other lives in Dubai. He visits once in a while. Shamira thought, maybe this will be easy, just one person to care for. Madam Amina showed her around the house, which was filled with security cameras everywhere. Then, without wasting any time, she put Shamira to work in the kitchen. Shamira started cleaning, then after some time, she became thirsty. She opened the fridge, hoping to find water. Suddenly, Madam Amina rushed in, shouting, What are you doing in my fridge? Shamira, startled, replied, I've been working since I arrived, madam. I just need some water to drink. Don't eat or drink anything in this house unless I give you permission. Don't eat anything. Madam Amina repeated harshly. If you want water, drink from the tap. Shamira was shocked by the treatment, but she decided to keep quiet. It was, after all, only her first day. That night, when Shamira was ready to sleep, she asked, Where is my room? Madam Amina looked at her coldly. We go to bed at the same time, midnight. Follow me. She led Shamira to a narrow corridor between the bedroom and the bathroom. "You'll sleep here," she said, locking both the bedroom and bathroom doors. She didn't give Shamira a blanket, and the air conditioner was blasting cold air. Shamira lay on the cold floor, shivering, wondering what kind of people would treat someone like this. She burst into tears, whispering, "Why are they treating me like an animal?" It was a sleepless night. The next morning, Madam Amina handed Shamira a long list of tasks. Shamira, despite her exhaustion, obediently completed everything perfectly. When lunchtime came, she approached Madam Amina and said, "Madam, I'm really hungry." Madam Amina went to the fridge and pulled out some food that was on the verge of spoiling. "Eat this," she said curtly. Shamira couldn't believe it. There was freshly made food in the house, prepared by a chef, but her boss was offering her food that was barely edible. Madam Amina sneered, "The good food is for me and my son. I can't let that silly daughter-in-law of mine cook for my son and grandchildren. You will eat the same food I give to my animals." Shamira was in disbelief but kept her composure. She asked, "Madam, may I go and pray?" Madam Amina laughed mockingly. "Why do you pray? God won't accept any prayers from you because you're black. Only we will enter paradise." Shamira realized then that she was dealing with someone completely ignorant of their own faith. She insisted on praying anyway and went to perform her ablution. But before she could finish, Madam Amina was already ringing the bell, shouting for her, "Where is this lazy maid?" Shamira ignored the noise and completed her prayer. 2 hours later, Madam Amina received a visitor, an old friend she had grown up with. Shamira continued with her chores, vacuuming the living room while they chatted. As she worked, her veil accidentally slipped off her head, revealing her natural, tightly coiled African hair. This became the most humiliating moment of her life. Madam Amina and her friend burst out laughing. "What kind of hair is this?" they mocked, pointing at her. Madam Amina found it so amusing that she started taking pictures and videos of Shamira as if she was some sort of spectacle. "You look like an animal," they taunted. Shamira felt utterly degraded, but she remained silent, forcing herself to continue with her work. The next morning, Shamira rose early as usual, unable to sleep much. She went to shower outside, but once again, Madam Amina interrupted her. "Come out. I need coffee. Come. Shamira, already at her limit, came out of the bathroom frustrated and said, "Why do you always shout at me like this?" Madam Amina shouted back even louder, "I am your boss. If you don't like working here, go back to the office." Shamira, unable to take any more, replied, "Madam, please take me back to the office. I can't work with you anymore." Madam Amina, furious but realizing she couldn't keep Shamira against her will, snapped, "Fine. Tomorrow morning, I'll send you back." Shamira nodded, relieved. "I will be glad to go," she said softly, eager to leave this nightmare. Shamira felt a relief. "Finally, let me go back to the office or this woman will kill me." As Shamira was packing her belongings, Madam Amina came in and started sweet-talking her. "Please Shamira, like you see, I am a widow. Please stay. Do not leave me alone in this house. Please, okay, I will increase your salary." But Shamira had already made up her mind. She replied, "I'm very sorry madam, I have to go back to the office." Madam Amina got really angry and asked, "Why do you want to go? I am a good lady." Shamira laughed and said, "I'm sorry, I felt like you treated me like your animals." Madam went to her bedroom, disorganized everything. She called Shamira, "Come clean my room and organize everything in order." With a smile did what she was ordered to do. After that still plied her with more work since Madam knew that Shamira was firm on her decision. The day went by and morning Shamira was all packed up and taken back to the office.